Welcome back, everyone, to the World's Countdown, where we are about 9.5 minutes away from, here's one of my colleagues from EU, that's nice to see. That is LeBlanc, of course, and we are 9 minutes away from Infinity versus EDG. And as we count down towards that first game of the day, we're also going to check out some players you need to keep your eyes on in Groups A and B. And as we run them down, it'll be Ascension Gaming's Lloyd, it'll be Perks from G2 Esports, then Zeitnot for Supermassive, and iBoy for EDG. So Lloyd first up. From Ascension, we already mentioned the fact that he was an AD carry and a pretty good one at that, and is now in the jungle. Yeah,
used to actually give Oceania teams nightmares when he played on the Bangkok Titans. This is a guy that's been around with G4 for a very long time, I think now 3 years, and has got good synergy. The move was a bit of a surprise just because of how bottom lane focused they were, but with the change, we're able to change up also how the team operates.
Yeah. Clear decision-making going top side for them. So for Lloyd, very naturally supporting Rocky in the top side of the map should be an easy job for him. Hey, follow the Graves. He was a Graves AD carry player bottom lane, and sure, he didn't play too much Graves top side. He's playing a lot of Trundle. I expect him to go towards it.
Perfect. We'll keep an eye on his aggression. The second player I want to look at is G2's Perks. We talked a bit already about how this roster is completely rebuilt. Well, the only guy who is still standing is Perks, the mid laner. He, of course, had some really good performances at Worlds, at MSI. Last year, he's also featured in the Rise video, so that's pretty cool for him. It must mean he has legendary status or is approaching, but there is a lot on his shoulders because we're looking at him to carry this lineup.
Yeah, he has a lot to say. Of course, leader and captain of the lineup. And remember, for Perks, big thing is EU mid. He's always been the name to look for every single time G2 does make it an international stage. He's a very confident player. I think he'll bring it forward.
Yeah, and he had a lot of success at the start of his career, and I think that as he continues to build that legacy around himself, now he is a focal point. Now there's no Sven and Mithy to kind of catch you in that late game. But the impressive thing to me about Perks has been his attitude. You know, he did the breakdown of where he thinks the mids kind of sit. He seems to have grounded himself a little bit, is a little bit more humble, and I think that as his career progresses, this is a good meta for him. He's a big assassin player. It should be in his wheelhouse, and a lot of the map does rotate around the mid lane at the moment.
I agree, and G2, when they did get to Worlds, they always got put in very tough groups as being the first seed. This might be a blessing in disguise, the fact that they get to kind of show what they're worth through the plains, and hopefully in a good group they end up in. No bias, though. So then, the next player we want to look at is one of the competitors of Perks in that group, Zeitnot on Supermassive. Now, I think the bottom lane of Supermassive in general, with Snowflower, is a force to be reckoned with, but this guy is just a fantastic AD carry.
Great combination, great individual player. Damage percentage is always important because he's the focal point in the early laning phase. Incredibly aggressive, just always standing forward. Forward percentage has to be high for him. So that's a player that you have to be watching. I know all of Turkey is going to be watching to see if Zeitnot can come through in the international stage.
He was great at MSI.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing, is that MSI, he was able to keep up with the international AD carries, and he's also very good when Snowflower wants to roam. He doesn't die all that much by himself. He's a great team fighter. Overall, he's just got really solid mechanics, great fundamentals. He's one of my players to watch, absolutely, and I think that if he performs well, this team will continue to upset.
Agreed. Now let's also look at this other AD carry that we need to mention, EDG's iBoy. Of course, I have fond memories of interviewing him at Worlds 2017. He's still a very young guy, though, and he has a lot to uphold when it comes to EDG's legacy.
Yeah, one of the people that had to come in and replace the legendary like Pawn Deft, and they're big shoes to fill, but iBoy's done it well since the inception of him into this lineup. He's paired with Meiko. He's kind of grown up underneath Meiko here, and they play very well around each other.
And remember, a big point too is that he didn't get Rookie of the Split when he first came out in 2017 because he came out in the back end. He actually had to make his name on an international stage, and he did so. One of the prime players that actually was overperforming on EDG at that point. So you have to be watching iBoy.
Yeah, EDG's iBoy is someone to watch, and it's only 5 minutes and 30 seconds until they kick off the first game on day 2 versus LLN's Infinity Esports. There's another big thing we need to bring up when it comes to EDG. They're a huge name history. They have a legacy to uphold, and one of the people that has been very important in that legacy over the years is Clearlove. Now, this year, though, it's not always been Clearlove up on the slate for EDG. There's been a lot of Haro, yet they're starting Clearlove today. What's up with that?
So for me, when it comes to usually, I remember Cloud9 coming in yesterday, bringing out their rookies to get them that airtime. For me, Clearlove is coming in as the sub, personally. He needs to prove himself that he's going to be able to come in and perform, because when he gets to an international stage, while he's great domestically, internationally incredibly poorly. So he needs to come out and build up that confidence.
And Raz, he's my favorite player of all time. I've always been a massive fan. I had him in my players to watch in 2016, but he won IPL 5 like 6 years ago. And MSI,
Rivals,
and since
MSI,
then
MSI,
hasn't been
yeah.
able to do all that much. He has a billboard outside at the moment, but I don't think he should be the person starting. I think that if you get your team to Worlds,
But he's got a
you
billboard.
deserve to have the starting position, and that is what Haro did. Clearlove, inconsistent throughout the entirety of split number 2.
Yeah, and I want to say, shout out to the EDG fan club out there, just a big one, because remember when Ray had his birthday, all across the Super Brand Mall, just giving them the support. So if he needs confidence, they have his back.
Oh, they love him.
But to your point, I agree. Haro actually came in very strong in the gauntlet run. I think that Clearlove has his point of strength of being able to take some of the, shot calling duties away from Meiko and make it a lot easier for them. But we'll have to keep a watch out for that.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point to track. If Clearlove doesn't bring home the bacon here in this first match versus Infinity, there's going to be some thinking to do, and we might see Haro at the rest of the day. Very important developing story for EDG and Clearlove, but as said, they're up against Infinity Esports in the first game of the day, and it might be easy to kind of underestimate a team that comes out of LATAM North when you're going up against such an epic team from the LPL, but I think they've earned their pedigree in international play-in stages in the last couple of years. This is a new team, though. Do they have enough individual talent to upset teams and maybe make it to the rest of the
Oh, they have the individual talent. Like 100% Cotopaco and Renyu are going to be bringing it for them. Experience isn't there. I wonder if that's going to impact the play because we've heard nervousness out of the first day that's been coming through and permeating through the new
Arce
players.
is very experienced.
And that's the one we're going to be looking towards. Arce, the former support player from Lion that's been constantly getting that international experience, the commander for the squad, and I think he's going to be cooling them down.
Do you think he's also going to be the guy that kind of initiates a lot of the stuff that this team's going to do on the Rift?
Yes, he's a major Alistar player.
Okay.
Alistar is his birthright. So honestly, like if he gets Ali, he's good.
All right, now, so let's see how both these teams win their first game. Then first up, I guess, the favorite in the matchup, EDG. How do they bring it home?
And I think the way EDG win this game is by not losing the game at the start of the game. Historically, when they were upset by INTZ in the group stage, it was because they kept getting invaded topside of Summoner's Rift. Mouse was a weak point. Get yourself a draft where you have a good tank in the top lane, a consistent team fight, get Scout and iBoy to a couple of items, Raz, and just allow them to do their thing.
And I'm just going to look towards Scout and iBoy because they're phenomenal players, but for Scout, his name was the double-edged sword for the team. He'd give you a lot of opportunities. He's a playmaker, but he might end up coming out and losing you a lot of points. I think this has been a good year for him so far at taking it away, so just calm down.
Calm down.
Relax.
Calm
You
down.
don't have to do too much early. Just set the pace, listen to Clearlove, and you're good.
Let's see if that happens. And Infinity, on the other hand, I guess we want them to come out all guns blazing. Of course, they only got here 2 days ago.
Yeah, and I think that's a big thing, right? This is a team that is going to be jet lagged. There's a 12-hour time difference, and they got in late due to some visa. But I think that this is where preparation comes in. Even though you come in late, there is still patches that you're able to win. Get something that your team is comfortable around the early game. Get rolling. If you've got a trap card, play it immediately, because if you win this game, you're nearly guaranteed to get out of this group.
They have the focus too. Immediately remember they're a great early game team. For their region anyways, they go towards get first towers, first blood.
Yep.
I want to see if they can emulate that going up against EDG because that's their win condition.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely huge. EDG wants to get off to a great start and find themselves in the group stage of Worlds, of course, in just a week. And Infinity wants to show that LATAM North is a region to be reckoned with, just a minute away from the first game. So let's get over to our casters with Dracos and Fedius.
Thank you, Shocks, and hello, everyone. I'm Daniel Dracos, joined by the newest member of my 90s beatbox tribute band, the Celtic Shockers. It's Andrew Bedius Day, a Welshman amongst my new 90s band. How do you feel? Do you feel honored?
I feel very honored, and you even named it after the Celts, so that's very kind of you.
I mean, I had to. It was really the only way I could get you to join. You're very much about the naming rights, but of course, it's not about us or our amazing '90s tribute band. It's about the two teams that are about to show up on your screens: EDG and Infinity. An exciting first match, and for Infinity, it feels like this underdog story. But think about it: jet lag coming in on the back of the reputation of Rainbow 7, and then if they manage to beat EDG in their first game. That's like the most heroic play-in story of all time.
It certainly would be. And Infinity, we haven't seen this team ever on an international stage. As you rightly said, it's always been Rainbow 7. They've always been the ones to represent Latin North America. And the fact that they were upset by this squad and they had a pretty convincing final makes them all the more exciting to see what they can bring out on an international stage. Will they bring a new flavor? Will there be a new player that can really stand out?
For now, ladies and gentlemen, we can hear the teams getting announced, everyone in the crowd getting ready to witness our first match.
자, EDG 말씀드린 바와 같이 굉장히 강력한 포스를 보여주고 있었습니다. 자, 과연 인피니티 e스포츠가 어떻게 상대할지 그 부분이 상당히
Both
좀
teams now
궁금한
entering the
그런
stage, and
부분인데요.
here, of course, our Korean counterparts announcing the lineups as they enter. Infinity now sitting down, EDG across from them, and I like Infinity still looking comfortable. You know, what we see from them. Run down each of the squads, take a look. And for EDG, Clearlove starting. A lot of people wondering why, but I'm excited to see this veteran on the stage. Worlds has been a hit-miss with him historically, but I want to see what he can do here, what he can put up against SolidSnake on the opposite side, because he has been solid, you know. This man's not hiding in a box and waiting for people to walk past. He's jumping out, he's making stuff happen in those team fights, which I think could be key if Infinity want to pull away with this one.
So, for fans that may not have followed EDG very much, and for why we may be bringing up the surprise in seeing Clearlove, for the vast majority of the split, they have been running Haro. Very active early game jungler. Mechanically, he's considered very strong, but he doesn't quite have the experience or expertise that Clearlove often brings to the squad. The clear voice that can direct them towards what to do with their leads and how to approach the mid and late game. And I think that coming into their first game, they just want that essence of experience. They want him to just act as a guiding force that can help them secure an early win, because remember, they only end up playing 4 games in the play-in stage, and it is possible to be upset, especially against teams that you've never played before or never seen before. I mean, we saw it yesterday, DFM versus Cloud9, very close game, took many by surprise. So to me, that's just what we're seeing from EDG. A lot of respect, and they just want that essence of direction and experience on their side.
Of course, Vedius, the less games, the more important each one matters individually. And for EDG, can't afford to be caught sleeping, because Infinity, we've seen how dominant they can be domestically. Want to see if that dominance now carries over to this stage, of course. The underdogs counted out here, but EDG starting Clearlove, yeah, they're going to get more leadership, but giving up that early game against a team, now admittedly, not known for being the most aggressive early game, but you heard it on the desk. If they want to win, it's got to be in the early game. You got to take these leads. You got to force Edward Gaming to fight you. Do not let them play their game.
See, and I think that's going to be really difficult, because for me, Edward Gaming are one of the best early game teams at the World Championship. Their ability to play the first 15 minutes of League of Legends is very impressive. Not only because they have a lot of strong individual talent, but they just seem to know what to do. Like, their early game plan is always executed upon flawlessly. My issue with them is when they get past the 15-minute mark, and that's where they kind of lose that sense of direction. And in part, that is due to the arrival of Haro and them not properly being able to utilize the strengths that he can provide. But you hope that with the addition of Clearlove, that extra bit of expertise will help utilize any kind of early leads they build into a stronger mid game. And I feel like for Infinity, their strengths really come from their mid to late game, unless SolidSnake can have a good early start to the game. And he's going to be the jungler that I keep my eyes on. How much of an impact can he have? Can he mitigate the pressure that Clearlove could look to exert? Or is he just going to try and play the slow, passive style that we have often seen from Infinity, especially during the finals?
And can they afford to take the risk of not getting aggressive in the early game? Because if EDG has this massive gold lead in the, gets it in the early game, in their terms, on their home turf, see how that works out, not home turf, the section of the game where they are comfortable. Ryze banned out immediately here, and I respect that. You look at the opposite lineup, not only is Ryze strong in the meta, but for Cotopaco, it is a very solid pick overall. Urgot and Gragas going to follow. Priority, Vedius, a little different than we might have expected based on day one. What do you expect to see come out here?
Well, I'm looking at some other big comfort picks for Infinity, and I feel like Skarner needs to be taken off the board as well. Interestingly, they're going to take Arce off the Alistair. He has played a lot of things like the Rakan and the Braum. Not many Alistair games, but Edward Gaming is saying, you know what? We just don't want to deal with that champion right now. And you could, on paper, just say that they've taken away a lot of the strong meta picks. But as you rightly said, I think the Ryze takeaway from Cotopaco is very strong, because it will kind of force Cotopaco onto more of a utility-style champion in something like the Orianna or Lulu that will provide more backline support.
Interesting, though, the Kai'Sa going to be the lock-in iBoy with an incredible amount of games in this champion. Really reliable as a carry threat for the EDG lineup. Nunu hovers, though, being flashed back and forth. I don't think we're going to see either team play it, but maybe there's been new developments between day one and day two that have put the little Yeti and his friend up to the top of the
I would be very surprised if that was the case. I'd see an early priority on something like the Skarner. The Varus makes a lot of sense too. A strong laner into the Kai'Sa can net you some early leads towards the bot side of the map. They could look to early lock in a Braum as well, considering that he is considered, even after the nerfs, still one of the strongest supports in the current meta. It depends what kind of direction they want to go in. Morgana is something we've often seen as well as a kind of aggressive option, and it is something that we've seen a couple times from Arce.
Really taking their time, though, on the second pick here in the first rotation. Camille is
right.
going to be locked in now. Usually, I would assume this is the jungle Camille, but in a lot of these play-in regions, top lane Camille is still a huge priority. I want to see if Relic wants to try to take that into his own hands.
I think you got it right the first time, though, Dracos. You know, because when we look during the regular season for SolidSnake, the team has a lot of faith in their jungler. They will often put him on these carry-style champions, things like Nocturne, Camille, all have something that can skirmish in the early game, something that can net you a lot of early game leads, and he's kind of one of the big players that they look to enable, and that's why you often see things like the Lulu or Orianna from Cotopaco when the Rise isn't available, so that they can enable their jungler a little bit more. And in team fights, he's going to be a big player to watch. We talked a little bit about him before Champion Select, but it will also allow Meiko to get one of his signature supports in the Tahm Kench as well.
Of course, that much more difficult to kill iBoy as the game progresses, and a little bit more difficult to play Camille. So teamfight's going to be a lot more difficult with that champion up and available, given over to Meiko in the end, and LeBlanc now for Scout. Cotopaco, you said, hey, maybe a defensive choice. Well, seems like you might need to take one up against a champion like that.
I'd love to see a Gallia right now. I know it's not something that he often plays, but I think it would fit perfectly into the comp. Unfortunately, he's going to stick with the standard Lulu. I think that in terms of the matchup, it will give LeBlanc a lot of pressure, and once Lulu hits level 6, sure, she can be difficult to kill, but she is very squishy at early levels, and Scout will have a lot of control in that lane, and it will set him up nicely to be a threatening split pusher later on into the game, which, to be honest, I feel is one of his strongest attributes as a player. In a side lane, this guy is devastating. Mechanically, he's very solid. He has good awareness of where to move around the map, and I think LeBlanc is a perfect champion for him.
Then the question becomes, how do Infinity respond to this? Well, so far in the second pick phase, they're just taking away some of these stronger junglers. Clearlove, of course, pretty comfortable on Skarner and is back in that Skarner meta. The Braum, though, going to get denied and taken away. The other really strong tank bottom side limited and taken off the board. Now what are Infinity going to go for? Could we see a Lulu flex, Vedius? Is it possible?
We could. It's not something that they've played during their regular season. Morgana is another option. Shen is another one too. If they're feeling ambitious, they could go for the Pike. I mean, they already have a decent amount of damage with the Camille and the Varus. You're expecting a tanky kind of top laner, but maybe if they're feeling confident, they really want to play towards bot side of the map, then that is an option for them. But for now, Infinity are just continuing to take away these junglers, limit the number of options that Clearlove has at his disposal.
And he is the wild card here, so it makes a decent amount of sense. You haven't got as much of a sample size on what Clearlove is going to bust out here, as he played on the starting lineup in a bit of time. Now picking what appears to be the support option. We'll confirm that Lulu into the mid lane if they lock the Janna here. Another defensive choice, not the Pike. I kind of wanted to see the Pike, Vedius. But it's the Shen instead. Could still go top lane, but I love support Shen. The ability to go support your top laner to say, I want to get the heck out of here and help a different lane always appeals to me.
I think it also does pretty well into the Tahm Kench in lane. You can be pretty aggressive with it. You can net yourself some pretty solid advantages. And as you rightly said, it has the global setup. You can combine it with the Camille when you're trying to set up engages. Gives SolidSnake a bit of extra tankiness and gives him a couple more options when he's looking to invade and get up in your face. So I quite like the pick. Edward Gaming gonna round things out with a little bit more engage though, and maybe some damage for Clearlove.
Ooh. Nocturne locked in for Clearlove. I like it's confident. Gonna come in at level 6. Now there's a Lulu and a Shen. This feels like a hard team for Nocturne to get a lot done, but I respect Clearlove taking it anyway. He says, wherever you're alone, wherever you're isolated, I'm gonna show up and I'm gonna kill you.
Well, I think it's important to remember that once the Nocturne ultimate comes down, that Shen ulti cannot be used. So he will have the surprise if EDG are the ones to kick off the fights. And it can also, I love the combo of Ornn plus Nocturne too, because you throw the darkness down and then you don't actually know where the Ornn ult is coming from. The near sight that you get afflicted with makes it really difficult to predict the engage. And you think about all the mobility that EDG have at their disposal, the ability for Tahm Kench to flank behind you, the ability for Kai'Sa to ulti anywhere she pleases, the LeBlanc to come out from nowhere. Like, the moment that Nocturne ulti comes down, Infinity just go into panic mode and have to start clumping up into this little cluster to avoid getting picked off. But then Ornn is like, oh, thank you so kindly for grouping up. So I feel like the engage options are perfect for EDG, and I think they're set up for success for finding early leads with this LeBlanc pick in the mid lane.
Exactly what they wanted to see, but on the opposite side for Infinity, what avenues do they have to take the lead in this game to stop this, LeBlanc, Nocturne, Ornn kind of combo from picking off these members, from shutting down this opposition? What are Infinity's routes into this game?
Well, I think you really want to limit the ability of LeBlanc to find an early lead. and you're also going to try and shut the Nocturne down as much as possible. The thing about his jungle clear is it is pretty fast, and he can be pretty healthy, but he spends a lot of mana, and if he doesn't have that Q available, his dueling prowess drops pretty significantly. So when you pair that up with the Lulu, you can have some pretty strong dueling potential. You just have to make sure that the LeBlanc is not in a position where she can join up, because Nocturne LeBlanc, that's quite the scary duo. So my eyes will be on SolidSnake. What is he able to do in the early game? Can he influence Clearlove's early presence, especially once he hits level 6? Or is he going to take this more passive approach? Will he play the game a little bit slower and more towards the scaling avenue, which, to be honest, I don't want to see, but it's something that they have often done.
We heard it from the desk. We know this team is good in the mid to late game, but you might not get the chance to play the mid to late game if you don't show up strong in the early game. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Game 1 of the day, day 2 of plans in Worlds 2018. A beautiful golden Kaza. That's the first time I've seen that.
That is the first time I've seen that as well.
And there's the prize. Digital Summoner's Cup. You can look at it, but you can't touch it. Both these teams are going to be looking to grab it for themselves. Infinity versus EDG. And level 1, Infinity clearly sniffing something out. They're ready to defend their turf or potentially go for the invade as you hear the EDG fan chants alive and well. You saw the billboard. EDG fans are out in force at this
Very
tournament.
dedicated fans. Very, very dedicated. Always a pleasure to see. Now, Infinity looking for a bit of an early invade to get some vision down, see where Clearlove is starting things off. Right now he's hanging around the top side, but with no ward actually being dropped onto the red buff, they don't have that much information. Now Clearlove,
He's thinking about it. Oh, there's Varus. Does spot him. Managed to take the ward down, though. A little bit of gold, tiny bit of experience. Not going to matter too much here. Could be a small difference maker. Laning phase will start, and it looks like Shen and Varus may be a little late getting to lane. And Scout already getting aggressive here on the level 1, but Lulu with the empowered autos, trading back. Bit of a risk there from Scout.
the double airy proc gonna work out very nicely, but you also have the double corrupting potion from both sides. You'd imagine that the tonic rune will also contribute in terms of the sustain. But we have Clearlove starting on the red side of the map and SolidSnake starting on his red as well. Remember that for Nocturne, not really the best early game ganker. There are potential options around the mid lane against the Lulu if you're able to land the chains. But for the focus, he's just primarily going to try and get level 6 as fast as he can. And with this early pressure, you can already see Cotopaco building up for himself. I'd love to see SolidSnake try and use this so that maybe he can get into the enemy jungle, drop a couple wards, maybe even steal a few camps, given that in the early levels, I do give the trading advantage over towards the Camille.
Yeah, and I'm wondering exactly what path SolidSnake wants to take here, because you can see Clearlove going for the slower clear, where you take all 3 of the bottom side camps, you get level 3, you get fast to that level 6, as you were talking about. And SolidSnake so far, moving around, taking the Scuttle Crabs, but not getting any real greater advantages quite yet.
It's a very unique path from SolidSnake. He went from topside red into bot side Scuttle, now going into topside Scuttle. Remember, Clearlove, level 3. Simply having this level advantage will allow him to win out in the trade, and Ray is coming down as well.
SolidSnake's gonna have to back off here. Good use of the lane pressure there from Ray to come down to threaten. Now, ooh, Cotopaco's gotta get out of here. Polymorph gonna flash the safety. Scout goes in for the auto, and first blood dropping for the man in the mid lane on EDG.
And this is what we were talking about in draft. Lulu, very squishy in the early game, means that if LeBlanc is able to land a good rotation of spells, you can find yourself some very early kills. Scout off to a fantastic start for EDG.
Absolutely the case. 21 CS to 12 already, and a first blood kill, and level disadvantage here counting against him.
So Cotopaco tries to go in for the last hit on the cannon. Scout reads it, able to land a full rotation of spells, gets the electrocute, gets the ignite, and finds himself his first blood of the day. Very great way to start off the
we've all seen, we know that facial expression. That's the I'm leaning against LeBlanc. Oh yeah, all right, that's how that works. And Scout, of course, World's performance. You can see why people are hesitant, even when this guy looks so good recently, to give him a lot of praise, because 2-4, not the best record, but you can still see that he's winning his lanes, he's got a solid KDA, and his damage is pretty good as well.
Yeah, and like last year at Worlds, Scout was the kind of guy that just played a little over-aggressive. I remember him pretty much sitting in the enemy's half of the lane throughout the entire laning phase, and while often he could build up advantages, and Clearlove did what he could to try and keep him alive and basically just enable Scout as much as possible, he was still that mid laner that he wasn't reliable, he wasn't consistent, and I feel like over the last year, he's definitely had struggles, but his recent performances have really elevated the team, and especially in their playoffs against IG, he was trying really hard to carry that team, and he was going above and beyond. So to see Scout kind of return to form and make it to the World Championship is definitely a big deal for EDG and for many EDG fans. And to start off with a solo kill, he's definitely going to be feeling pretty confident.
Excellent. Back at home in Korea, too, for Scout. On the bench for FLICKR for so long, and now trying to find these solo kills on the world stage. But Cotopaco still trading back and forth. Has the Ignite available for himself, so maybe if Scout gets over-aggressive, as you mentioned was a historical tendency, he could get punished. Not going to quite happen yet. Trading on the bottom side, but iBoy still winning that one out. Tahm going to bring it back. Are they going to be able to find the all-in here? Arce now ignited, running for his life. Tries to buy a bit of time with the Spirit's Refuge, but now they're just going to look for two. iBoy is also going to have to back off the flash forward. Tongue connects, he wants one more. Can he get it? The arrow does manage to take it back. Beautiful tanking from Meiko, the double dropping for EDG's bottom lane.
And EDG are just crushing Infinity right now. Solo kill in the mid lane, 2v2 kill in the bot lane, and everything is going in favor of Edward Gaming. 2,000 gold lead 5 minutes into the game.
They're trying to kill people across the map. Quick level 6 all in. Right as the level 6 comes through, Scout gets aggressive. Half of Lulu's health in an instant. And Infinity, we wanted to see what they could do in the early game. They might not even get a chance. Gonna go in. Is he gonna get the Scuttle Crab too? No, Sion will take it away. Shen does manage to connect. Relic's gonna follow up with the tether of his own. That's the 2 chains. Back off. Not gonna get anything else. You can tell Infinity now playing a little bit more reserved. They know they're on the back foot now in this early game.
Yeah, just a bit. Infinity, the problem they have now is that you can't really afford to allow EDG to get ahead, especially on this Kai'Sa. Remember that Varus often has the advantage in the laning phase, and the fact that you're falling behind is definitely not the situation you want. Now remember, Infinity, they have a minion wave, so they're looking to go for this trade because they feel they're in the better position, but once you hit all 5 stacks from the Kai'Sa onto your target, you take a lot of damage, and meanwhile, Arce just building up the stacks from the side of the Tahm Kench, you get gobbled up, you get dragged in, and now you're in a 2 versus 1 situation, allowing iBoy and Meiko to go for this dive.
And that Acer Predator replay is just a clear indicator of how iBoy likes to play the game. He doesn't care who you are, he doesn't care what you're playing. He is out here to kill people. Now, sometimes that counts against him, but today, Vedius, it is a good look. They go in for that 2v2, and he's now closer to that Rage Blade early on and already winning a lane where you might not have expected to have a lot of pressure.
Yes, 2-0-0 right now for iBoy. Definitely a great position to be in, and Infinity, for them to come back, they're gonna have to make some miracle plays happen. SolidSnake is gonna have to, how do I say? I was trying to think of a Metal Gear reference. It didn't come to mind fast enough.
This is the one that I've stuck with right now. You see a little bit more aggression on the bottom side. You can see them getting zoned out, and sadly, SolidSnake, he's still in the box. He's hiding. There's been no exclamation points. No one has found him yet. But we need SolidSnake. We need you. Come out, get out of the box, shoot somebody, or in this case, jump at them with your blade legs. That's what Infinity need right now, and it's just not coming through yet.
Well, he's nearly level 6. If he was looking to play around the lane, bot lane would be a good one. There are 0 summoner spells available right now. And they still have a bit of a farm advantage. He's got to be careful here.
Looking aggressive, but forced to burn out the ultimate there. SolidSnake now on the bottom side. We're going to have to see how much he can get done. And once again, this is the guy we're watching to make an impact. He's going bot lane. Bot lane's going mid. Lulu could now just be in trouble. I don't think there's any way out for this. The Lulu trying to get a kill back in return, but iBoy just on a killing spree. This is a grim state of the game, Vedius. EDG are just taking absolute control from the bottom side up.
Yeah, excellent use of the Tahm Kench ulti very early on into the game. EDG had the push in bot, and they could quickly rotate up towards the river. Even with the vision, it wasn't enough, and unfortunately for Cotopaco, he was pushing a little too far up into the lane, and with the chains already landing from Scout, results in a very easy kill. So EDG now 4-0, the 3,500 gold lead.
At 8 minutes.
Yep.
Which is pretty terrifying. And we talked about SolidSnake. He's level 6 now. Maybe he can make a play on the map, but you really need EDG to trip up a bit here in the early game. You need them to make some kind of mistake, because the Nocturne level 6 is here too. I feel like we're just going to hear him push the button. There it is. Goes in. Lulu, where are you going to go? Not a lot of options trying to run. Just silenced and eliminated. EDG are merciless.
Yeah, they're not giving the Lulu a fun time. And I mean, we talked about this in draft. Like, we talked a little bit about the option of a Galio, how you need that extra bit of tankiness, but they decided to stick to comfort, and EDG, I guess they expected it. They wanted to play around it, and it all started with Scout finding that solo kill. He started off the game by getting a 1v1 against Cotopaco, and ever since he fell slightly behind, they've just been investing resources into getting mid further and further ahead. So EDG now 5 kills to 0. Infinity starting to run out of options in terms of how they come back into this game.
Absolutely are. How long before Cotopaco can just not enter the lane phase? We see this one now. It's with the help of Nocturne. Just an insane amount of damage, Vedius.
Yep. Like, there's not much you can do, right?
And
It's just...
you got to feel for the dude. Once again, this man got into Korea 2 days ago, gets on stage. Who's his first opponent? It's Scout. Like, you don't get to start with triple and kind of maybe get a warm-up here. You go straight to Scout. That is difficult.
Yes, yes it is. That is an apt description.
There's probably better adjectives I could have used, but difficult felt appropriate, Vedius. And now EDG looking good to start this run. And I think if you are an LPL fan, and there are many in the audience right now, this is how you wanted to see this one start out. You did not want to see EDG struggle in the plans whatsoever. And here in game one, this is just dominance.
Yes, and I think this kind of ties in with many of the expectations that many fans have of kind of the major regions that compete in the play-ins. We saw G-Rex yesterday have a really impressive performance, and you know, often with the LMS third seed, there are a couple doubts, especially after Hong Kong Attitude last year, but G-Rex came up swinging. We saw Cloud9, while a little shaky, still getting a 2-0, and then EDG, I feel like, have looked the most convincing so far of the major regions that we have seen. Finding multiple solo kills, very quick to utilize the early goldies that they've built up, and now they just want to keep the pressure up. The Nocturne ulti is available once again, the Tahm Kench ulti is up too, and EDG, they're just looking for their next target to kill.
And you have to be terrified, because the amount of mobility between a Kai'Sa, a Tahm Kench, and a Nocturne, they can be anywhere on the map in an instant if they're set up to do so. You have to respect it, and you know, Paranoia, the Nocturne ultimate, really living up to its name at this point, because where there is no vision, they are terrified to go.
And the only person we haven't seen yet is Ray come down to the mid lane, and I wouldn't be surprised if an Ornn suddenly made its way towards that mid lane just to make Cotopaco's day that bit worse.
So incredibly difficult. 111 to 66 in CS. Bot lane's holding its own decently. Top lane 10 difference.
Here we go, Snake.
Ulti now going to come in. LeBlanc now to be able to make his way out of this one. Everything being burned. They're trying to turn him over, but Clearlove is right there. Going to take one down. Trying to grab another one now. The rest of the bot lane is here. This is disaster for Infinity. They finally get one kill, but it might just cost them everything. iBoy in the face of the Camille. One taken down. Looking for one more, but the flash out to safety. The double still dropping in the end, and here comes the Sion. Looking to make an impact here. We'll get the slowdown, the shutdown as well. This could be the turn, a massive influx of gold into the pockets of the Varus, but Ray coming as predicted. Knockup still gonna connect. He's going in. No mercy from the side of EDG in this exchange. Eat up the Sion, make him a zombie, make him run away in fear. Just absolutely no chance there at the end of the day. 10-2 the kill score.
And that was the ace in favor of EDG. The respawn timers are so low. The other members of Infinity had respawned before everyone else had died. 5 for 2 was what EDG were able to pull out off the back of that, and it started off with SolidSnake trying to find his first gank of the game. It went towards the mid lane, and it's nice that they're trying to shut Scout down. Like, they have the Shen ulti there as well, and the plan is solid, but EDG are just so quick to react. Meiko's ulti was on the trigger, ready to go. He shows up, and while Scout does die, they quickly turn this into a 3 versus 3, which they're able to turn in their favor. Now, with a good TP and a roam down from Relic, they're able to find a couple of return kills, but then Ray finally joins the fray. He has his ulti to kick things off. Renyu doesn't quite get the flash that he needs, and then EDG are more than happy to chase the kills down and round things out with an ace.
Vedius. You gotta respect Infinity for finding that window. They thought maybe they could turn this, but once again, that's the strength of the Kai'Sa, of the Tahm Kench, of the Ornn. So much semi-global presence. It just feels like it's impossible for them to cleanly get a man advantage the way they want to. And we look back, Vedius. You set some clear stakes for what Infinity needed to do. You said, you gotta limit this LeBlanc, and you gotta shut down the Nocturne in the early game. And now that neither of those things have happened, in fact, the opposite has now happened, it just feels so difficult for Infinity to do anything in this game.
And it is. You know, it's one of those situations where 5,000 gold down at 14 minutes into the game. There are very few ways to come back from that. You're very much relying on a team like EDG to make a mistake, and unfortunately, they're not making many mistakes.
No, there you go. Push R to kill a champion. That's all it's going to take.
That's the alert right there. The box has been spotted. EDG were just like, nope, you're not getting out of this one, Mr. Snake. And now they look to continue pushing their advantage. Rift Tower just got picked up. That mid lane at a tower is not going to be lasting very long.
Maybe get a bit of time, try to hit it home. Infinity, can they find a return play here? Well, not too likely. A Scout threatening over the backside, forcing out the Lulu ult immediately. Will they push for a second tower?
I think they will.
They've got just so strong on an individual level. The Herald there to tank for them, but they're going to settle for the charge in about half the turret's HP. Will work out nicely. Infinity holding on to scraps, holding on to what they can, getting farm wherever they think it's safe, but you can see from how close the members are playing to the base that there's not a lot of places that are safe on the map.
No, there are not. And what a debut for EDG. This is definitely how they wanted to kick off their playing stage. Multiple solo kills. Finding themselves an ace 10 minutes into the game. And so far, things are looking very clean. However, remember what we were talking about, Dracos. Up till 15 minutes, I feel like EDG is one of the best early game teams at the World Championship. But past the 15-minute mark, their ability to close out games is something that I've had a bit of skepticism around. Sometimes they don't have the cleanest Barons, sometimes they get a little over-eager, they don't make the best decisions, and I'm going to be watching now how they look to try and end this game.
And you can see the goal difference. Infinity a little bit more dominant domestically. EDG, of course, losing out a little bit, in the summer split a few times more than Infinity, but still, a lot more towers from Infinity, not seeing that early game that they wanted, and seeing an incredible early game from EDG, kind of as expected for many analysts. And Vedius, Clearlove was the other big question mark. Like, why are you playing Clearlove in the early game? Well, everyone else on EDG won in the first few minutes, and Clearlove just got to show up at level 6 and start cutting through people. And we have to wonder, shot calling and leadership is what we expect from this guy. Is this where the shot calling and leadership comes in clutch, and can they close out quickly?
Well, that's what we hope to see as he looks for another ult.
Trying to find the pick here on a Sion. There's the fear. Ornn coming in as well. Tahm Kench is here too. Relic, I don't think there's any way out of this one, buddy. Channeled and shut down in the end. Have to see what the rest of the team can do, as Relic is the sacrificial lamb for that Nocturne ultimate. Pretty much every single one being a death sentence at this point in the game.
Yeah, unfortunately for Relic, he was a little overextended and the rest of his team couldn't pick anything else up elsewhere on the map. In this situation, you're just forced to play ultra defensively. When you're 7,000 gold down, you're just relying on EDG to make a mistake. Maybe you can find a pick, and here we go. They're looking for it now.
Going in on Tahm Kench, maybe not what you want. iBoy incredibly strong here. He's going to throw out the ultimate, but Ornn is here to respond, and is going to find him right in the funnel. That's the 3-man. Lining it up, making it easy. Varus on the tree now. We'll buy a bit of time as they try to back off, but Scout now on the backside as well, cutting through that life bar. Cotopaco playing with fire as well. They're managing to pull back. Infinity getting out in the end, losing only their jungler, but not getting anything back in return.
Yeah, and SolidSnake, he was like, all right, let's try and find a pick. Let's try and force a fight. Unfortunately, once again, EDG is very quick to react, something that they did a lot in the LPL. I was kind of watching their gauntlet, and what I felt I saw was the team wasn't amazing at forcing proactive plays in like the mid to late game transition, but they were really good at reacting to whatever the enemy team tried to force upon them. And I feel like we're seeing it right now where Meiko just seems so aware of what possible plays could happen, and he's just primed and ready to react in time. Clearlove is there as well, and you talked already about the mobility that they have. You combine that in with everything, with already their good reaction speeds, and every time you try to force a play, you immediately get punished for it. And that's why this gold is snowballing ever so more in favor of EDG.
And you got to look at what Scout's doing right now. He knows that if anyone approaches this wave, he just kills them. So he just waits for the wave to crash, waits to see if there's going to be an opportunity presented by the opposition there. iBoy and Meiko with absolute control of the mid lane, and Kai'Sa on that 2-item spike so early in the game. Only 18 minutes with the double AP threats, and Nocturne with the Duskblade as well. It's just, you cannot get defensive stats fast enough to survive the threats on the side of EDG. Maybe with perfect positioning and use of the ultimates, they can make something happen here, but a difficult task now for Infinity.
Bit of a gamble there to contest the Drake. Surprised the EDG showed that much respect, and I feel like they didn't need to. I guess they were waiting for the Scout to just push out mid, have someone from Infinity catch the wave, and now they have their eyes set on the bot lane.
And this is the point that he's talked about. Outer towers are up, EDG play a clean game. Tier 2s are up, it's a little more suspect.
Now, the thing is, though, it's important to remember that the Baron isn't up yet. And closing the game is, you don't need the Baron, but it's often harder to do when you don't have that objective, because you're kind of forced to just push towards the towers, and all you can really do is wave clear. So EDG trying to force these tier 2s down might be a little bit harder, but with that gold lead, they could also just force a fight. Group is 5, say come fighters, they have so many engage tools that I don't think there's much that they really need to be afraid of. It just depends on how they want to approach this. Do they want to win through brute force, or do they want to try and play it a little bit more slow and calculated way?
I mean, so far we've seen a lot of brute force videos. I imagine that trend might continue. I mean, so incredibly, you know, aggressive here in the early game to pull out those 2v2 kills in lane. A 6-1-2 scoreline now for iBoy, and individual members doing their best to keep up in CS, but still very stacked against them. And I think, you know, you can be honest here that this is the longest shot. They were underdogs coming in.
Yeah.
And they are even greater underdogs after that early game. 20 minutes now, though, the Baron spawns, and EDG are so far ahead, they may just be able to try to contest this one. You know, you've got 2.5 items on the majority of your carry threats.
I mean, you talked about it as well, right? With the quick turnaround time, because the team unfortunately had some visa issues, and so they only arrived in Korea pretty recently, and then they're also dealing with the jet lag as well. Like, you set this up at the very beginning, which is like, they are heavy underdogs already, and to be able to find an upset would definitely be impressive and a big deal. And then EDG were just like, no, we're not gonna let you. And just the individual talent from EDG coming out and really just dominating in terms of the early game. But I feel like the last 5 minutes have certainly slowed down. We haven't seen 13 more kills, which is great for Infinity. And, you know, you never know. Maybe they can get a Baron steal. Maybe they can find a pick. Yeah, unfortunately, it's one of those situations where you're kind of looking at long shots just because of how big the goal difference is.
Long shots or death brush? That's the real question.
Brush.
Meiko moves forward to check. I just don't know. I don't know if 5 members can kill Meiko fast enough to stop the rest of EDG from killing their backline. I like to zoom out here from the observers. Thank you very much. Just highlighting the absolute vision control that EDG have over this topside jungle. Snake, you know, getting a little frisky. Hits him with the tactical sweep, but you don't want to go face first into that Tahm Kench. And every time a skill lands, you have to be nervous that maybe this is the one Kaisa follows up on, or the one that Nocturne wants to go in on. No Tahm Kench is a get-out-of-jail-free card here for some of the switchier members on the side of Infinity. That can do a little bit, but may not be enough to save him.
All right, so Baron is up. Ray is pushing bot. I want to see him move up now towards mid lane, have the team push out mid, and then stop Baron. And they either get a fight or they secure the objective. One of the two. Ray, that's it. Move up through the river, group up with the rest of your team, generate a numbers advantage, have your LeBlanc throw out a bit of poke, and then start threatening this objective.
Meiko's just gonna walk at him. Scout flashes it. Oh, God, no, Clearlove 2! They're deleting everybody. There is no mercy, Vedius. EDG, a single moment, a decisive action. The Ornn comes out too. Shen is next on the menu. Oh, it's just not enough of the Spirit's Refuge in the end. Oh, manages to live so far. A small victory, but a victory nonetheless for Infinity. And now it's Baron potentially in the sights of EDG. Exactly the case as Tahm Kench brings it over. Kaisa may just be enough damage to solo it out, given how strong she is at this point in the game. It'll be a slow and steady clear, and disaster strikes, Vedius.
So I thought that they would go for the slow and calculated play. They decided brute force was the way to go. But you know, we were talking about it, right? I feel like they could just force a fight, and then Scout was like, oh, we can just force a fight because I can one-shot their AD carry.
We call this strategy walk at them. We have a 10k gold lead. It works beautifully.
And they pulled it off. So now they have the Baron in their back pockets. They will now look to siege onto the enemy base. And EDG, 16-2 is the kill score, looking very convincing so far in their first game of the plan.
I would say a 13k gold lead is incredibly convincing. Scout doesn't have his team with him and remains confident enough to split push on that top lane tier 2, but good on Infinity. They're ready to punish if they get the opportunity. Sadly, Baron powered recall means there's not really any recourse there for them. We can take a look at this one more time. It's a story of one button, and that button is R.
So does he get exhausted too? No, he doesn't. So that's W into R into electrocute, more than enough damage. And then unfortunately, I mean, they're only level 11 as well. Like, Scout is level 14. What can you do? They wanted to get some vision around the Baron, and then EDG were just like, well, you know what? We're just gonna fight.
And you gotta respect EDG choking out the vision control, and Infinity, there's really no other option. You either give up a Baron or you face check the Baron vision.
Yeah, it's a lose-lose situation for Infinity, and we talked about how they needed EDG to make some kind of mistake, and EDG just haven't done that. So they built up this early lead, they've played it very cleanly, they utilized the vision they had in the enemy jungle very well, and now they're playing all 3 lanes. They have a very fed LeBlanc in the side, and EDG will now just slowly work their way into Infinity's base.
Just looking at those ultimate cooldowns. seeing when Clearlove is ready to go in next. He's just shadowing the team, ready to use the ulti to dive into the back line. Steady clear. Good news is there's not a lot of range on the side of EDG. If you're Infinity, you can just clear these waves. Do your best to. Sadly, Scout poking this one out, and if any individual member tries to contest here, they will likely just get deleted. So Infinity sending multiple members to take it out. Turret still goes down in the end, though. A slow chip down here.
Clearlove still hanging around, waiting for an opportunity. Here comes the ult from Ray.
Third opportunity to get it started. There goes the paranoia. The flash comes out anyway. Lulu all isolated and on her lonesome. Scout just leaps in and deletes the opposition. iBoy into the middle of 3 members, does not care. Now looking to clean house. Tahm Kench uses the ulti, immediately going to cancel. Scout goes golden. Sion, all that's left standing in the face of EDG. And this might just be it, Vedius. Wave is here. They've got more than enough time on the death timers, and no single member can stop this push. A monumental task ahead of Relic. I do not think it can be done. It is the slow, steady close out here after an explosive early game. EDG are just going to walk it down, Vedius, and a commanding first win here in their play-in group.
Very convincing from the side of EDG. Just a bit, I would say.
Just a little convincing.
Solo kills across the board. Good utilization of the early goal lead that they built up for themselves. I love the Tahm Kench ultimates from Meiko. I mean, it is one of his most played champions. And I feel like giving it over to him along with the 23 games that iBoy has played on Kai'Sa, you can see their experience kind of come through.
Absolutely can. Comfort on the individual champions as well as the absolute aggression that we saw on the bottom side of the map, winning out that 2v2, winning the 1v1 in the mid lane. Only the top laners had a calm laning phase.
Yeah.
And Relic sitting up there going, at what cost? Everyone else dying across the map. And remember, EDG were the favorites for this group. But did we expect 100%. Them to be this dominant? I'm gonna be honest, no. I mean, I expected dominance. They were the favorites going into this game, but I thought Infinity would be able to go toe-to-toe at a few points in the game. However, both the draft felt like it held them back, and additionally, a lot of the players just seeming lost in the early game.
So this sets up quite an interesting group now for EDG, because Direwolves, without their primary jungler available to them, will now be facing up against this monster later on in the day. And so EDG look fierce going into the play-in stage.
And that's one of those games that it's hard to take a lot away from because so many advantages were built early. But to get a breakdown on EDG's first win at Worlds, let's get a word from the State Farm analyst desk.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. That's actually an excellent point. I can't wait to see what EDG does to the Direwolves later in Just Spawn's face, but that's not what we're talking about now. Right now, we're talking about EDG's dominance in their first game over Infinity. Well, listen, we knew there were going to be favorites in this group, and sometimes in the play-ins, it does come to a situation where one team is just very, very strong and much stronger than their opponents. Now, my question I have for you guys is that what is the case? Or was it contributed to by the draft that Infinity chose?
I think the draft for Infinity was actually fairly strong. I thought that the Lulu was a very good choice versus the mid lane. That's something they could actually center around very heavily. Very good tank lineups from Shen and Sion made it so if there was anything happening around the mid lane, they can easily converge. I thought the draft was great for them. They just got dismantled before they even got there.
And what do we say about EDG?
Well, I think like on EDG's side that they had a couple of lanes that need to farm up. Kai'Sa, technically not a good laner, you know, got a Nocturne jungle. You're not expecting much pressure. If there was going to be any pressure, it would be out of the mid lane, which is why I like the Lulu. I liked it paired with the Camille. It's actually a pretty deadly combo. The problem came down to just execution. Like you can put a draft together, but if you can't actually execute on the game plan, then you're in a lot of trouble. And the fact that the Camille got spotted so early in the game, that Snake's pathing was so janky to me, really led Scout to just be able to do whatever he wanted. And I kind of, you could see the skill discrepancy in that lane.
And to remember, like, a lot of times in the LPL, the moment you get your first eyes on the enemy jungle, every lane just goes in. That's all you really need to see. And for this to happen, early levels, just to get the solo kill for LeBlanc, and you see immediately being followed up on the bottom side of the map, sets the tone for the game. So I may have said to calm down, but you know what? If they're just gonna go right on in and just like have no nerves at all, then just keep firing.
Yeah, this is arguably one of the most perfect first games they could have in this scenario.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I mean, they just threw so many shots, and every single one of them landed. There was no like, we got out by the skin of our teeth, like that was lucky, they outplayed us, but you know, we had a little bit in our favor. Every single time EDG made a play, they executed on it well, and there was just nothing going in Infinity.
No, it was pixel perfect from them, and I do want to credit Infinity for they were probably shocked after those first couple of minutes. They were like, all right, we're already X amount of gold behind. We haven't gotten any kills yet. They did try and do a couple of things when the game progressed. We'll take a look at one of those replays around 12 minutes. They wanted to fight, and I think this was kind of probably their last stand. They were like, okay, we've now thrown everything at you, and we still come out at the worst end.
And this is a good morale fight because you executed on it well, right? You got your Lulu and Camille into the fight. You were able to blow up the most fed member at the start of it. But ultimately, gold means something in this game, and this was just a gold lead team fight for EDG. But I think that if this had to happen in a neutral game, like, you know, it might have gone a little bit better for them.
And remember, one thing about EDG is that they're really good with semi-global competition. So Tahm Kench being picked up, even though the nerfs have been coming through a lot, Meiko will pick it up. And so being able to take his talents to the mid lane is something you always have to watch out for.
Yeah, and he's been always one of the most aggressive Tahm Kenchers in the world. Like, he's the guy that will flash on you in the laning phase and eat you. You saw multiple times in those replays that he's not using the Devour to save his allies. He's using it for the CC, for that percentage health damage. And I think that that really is what separates, you know, the good from the great as in Tahm Kenchers. Because if you match him with the Shen in that laning phase, and we're talking about this a lot, that's standard how you would play it. He was just like walking at the Shen over and over again, and putting on so much pressure on Arce, who wasn't really able to get much done.
No, very comfortable game for Meiko. Also a very comfortable game for Scout in the mid lane. He's also our MasterCard player of the game. Now, LeBlanc is one of his favorite champions. He had a lot of fans in the arena, and he went absolutely off. Of course, we know once you get that first kill as Lulu against it, you're like, all right, what now? And Scout just absolutely kept going all over the map with his LeBlanc.
Yeah. Remember, they're playing around Baron's side, but he was just hunting for the kills. One thing to make note of is he was in a counter matchup, but was able to get the early kill, instilling so much fear into Cotopaco really early on. You already made a mention of the fact that Camille was seen, so he can just go right in for it. And lane was frozen in a pretty good spot. He had to actually, Lulu had to overreach to use her E on a cannon minion, and immediately as that happens, he just jumps right in.
Now, if we tally everything up, when it comes to EDG, I'm actually none the wiser as to how they're gonna look as this tournament progresses. I would say, of course, in the plains, they still look like a favorite. But when it comes to the big debate we had about Clearlove starting, where you guys had a pretty strong opinion on, hey, I think Haro should get the chance, this actually didn't tell me anything about how strong Clearlove is. I don't know what you guys think.
I think maybe the draft told us something, because I think Kindred was a better pick up there, and he went towards Nocturne, maybe for that semi-global composition. But I think that Kindred would have had a lot more early presence in this, and maybe if the 2v2 was played better from Infinity, they would have been able to get the advantage there. But I think that that's just a Clearlove champion. Farm to 6, be able to do your job in the team fights, certainly something he's excelled on in the past.
So nothing has changed for them. Really, that's just all it is. The fact that it was a good ban for the Xin Zhao, because if the Xin Zhao wasn't banned, he was going to pick it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the fact that in 80 junglers, if you just force them onto an 80 jungler, if they have a pretty AP-heavy team composition, you're going to expect a Nocturne pick. And maybe a team going forward that's a little bit smarter in how the 2v2s can progress can try and challenge that.
Well, we will see. EDG big favorite in this group. Infinity is playing the Direwolves later as well, so maybe that'll give a better indication of the relative strength of both teams.
Yeah, and that's maybe the worst thing that could happen to Infinity, because if the games were switched, I think they're heavy favorites, but now we get to see their mental toughness. Worlds happens over a couple of days. They need to be able to bounce back pretty quickly and take it to the Oceanic representative.
You just need to forget this game when you're Infinity Gaming and get back on it.
100%. Like, remember, a lot of the camera work was actually going straight on towards Cotopaco.
Oh, he looks shattered.
Exactly. You cannot be feeling that. You have to really just, like, flush it all down. 2 hours to the next one, hopefully, just so he can kind of rejuvenate, because he has the best chance going up against Direwolves.
Yeah, he has a bit of time. Also, when you guys are watching at home, make sure you also tweet at us how your world's setup is set up with the hashtag #HowIWorlds all throughout the tournament, because whether you're catching the games from a couch in Cologne or watching with your dog in Dallas, we want to see how you are enjoying all the action. I swear, I do. Just send it to us. Coming up next, we've got a big clash in Group B, G2 Esports versus Supermassive. That's a big one. See you after the break.
Cotopaco's got to get out of here. Polymorph going to flash the safety scout, goes in for the auto, and first blood. iBoy. Thompson's going to have to back off the flash forward. Tongue connects, he wants one more. Can he get it? The arrow does manage to take it back. There it is, goes in. Ooh, where are you going to go? Not a lot of options trying to run, just silenced and eliminated. Massive influx of gold into the pockets of the Varus. Beret coming as predicted. Knockup still going to connect. He's going in, no mercy. Meiko's just gonna walk at him. Scout flashes it. Oh, God, no, Clearlove 2! They're deleting everybody. There is no mercy, Vedius. iBoy into the middle of 3 members, does not care. Now looking to clean house. Tahm Kench uses the ulti, immediately going to cancel. Scout goes golden. EDG are just gonna walk it down, Vedius, and a commanding first win here in their playing group.
The synergy of brute strength, born of elite core power, to thrive under pressure in the most hostile conditions, and built to overclock. Prepare for combat. Go forth and conquer.